They were seconds away from a public execution. In the center of the arena, a rare male Omega werewolf lay gasping for air, his silver blood staining the stone floor. Next to him, a powerful merman screamed in agony as his glass water barrier was about to shatter into thousands of sharp shards under a barrage of dark magic. And positioned just before them, a male fairy with heavily scarred, clipped wings used the absolute last drop of his life force to erect a failing shield. To the corrupt high judges of Merrowvale, they were an abomination. A triad couple of three entirely different species who had broken the ultimate law of the tri-union games. But the crowd didn't know the real truth. They didn't know that this wasn't an act of rebellion. It was the survival of an unborn child. To understand how they ended up here, facing the wrath of the entire empire, we have to look back 15 years to a single, forgotten mistake in the dark. Welcome to Merrowvale, a city built on a lie. On the surface, it's a glittering metropolis where different species coexist in harmony. But underneath the neon-lit magic, it is governed by a brutal caste system. The rules are simple. You breed within your species to keep the bloodlines pure. To mix is to invite exile. This is where we meet Renan. Born a rare male Omega werewolf, his life was a living nightmare from day one. In the wolf packs of Merrowvale, Omegas are treated as property vessels to be claimed and used by ruthless alphas. At just 8 years old, Renan was already running for his life, hiding his scent in the dampest, darkest corners of the city's lower docks. But one night, while hiding near the black market shipping lanes, Renan heard a sound that didn't belong to the land. It was a mournful, melodic cry coming from a heavy, iron-bound water tank. Inside that tank was Thaler, a runaway Merman prince who had been captured by illegal surface poachers. His captors intended to sell him to the highest bidder at the upcoming auction. Thaler was terrified, his aquatic magic locked away by cruel suppression cuffs. Before Renan could even think of a way to help, a third figure dropped from the shadows above. It was Evander, a young male fairy who had just survived the worst punishment his high elf rulers could inflict. His wings had been clipped, and he was cast out into the slums to die. 3 broken children, 3 different species, met by absolute chance in a dark alleyway where they shouldn't have been. They didn't speak. They didn't even know each other's names. But as the poacher's footsteps echoed down the corridor, an unspoken understanding passed between them. Evander used the residual, unrefined earth magic in his fingertips to rust the lock on the water tank. Renan used his sharp young claws to pry the heavy lid open. Together, they dragged Thaler out of the tank and rolled him into the open sea canal, just as the guards rounded the corner. Thaler swam away into the dark depths. Renan and Evander vanished into the fog. The boy who swam, the boy who ran, and the boy who fell. They thought it was a temporary moment of survival. However, nature has a funny way of remembering debts. When their hands had briefly touched during the rescue, a tiny, invisible spark of a tri-bridge bond was sown deep into their souls. A spark that would lay dormant for 10 long years. 10 years passed. The children became men, and the city of Merrowvale grew even more hostile. The annual Tri-Union Games were announced, a brutal, high-stakes tournament where multi-species couples showcased combined powers. The winners would become the city's ruling elite. The losers, stripped of everything. Renan, now an adult Omega, had managed to survive by working as a low-profile herbalist in the slums. But an Omega can only hide his scent for so long. His worst nightmare arrived in the form of Alpha Garrick, a ruthless. powerful pack leader who had been hunting for a rare silver-furred omega to cement his dominance over the lower districts. Garrick's voice echoed through the pouring rain. "Bring him to me alive." Renan was cornered. His body was exhausted, and his inner wolf was screaming in panic as he reached the edge of the deepest, darkest lagoon in the city. With no options left, Renan leapt into the black water below. As Renan sank, the cold water filled his lungs. He expected death, but instead, the water around him began to glow with a brilliant bioluminescent blue light. Two powerful webbed hands caught him by the waist. It was Thaler, no longer a helpless child, but a lethal, mesmerizing siren who ruled the underwater caverns of Merrowvale. As Thaler pulled Renan up into a hidden, dry cavern, he laid the shivering wolf gently on the stone floor. Their eyes locked in the dim, glowing bioluminescence of the cave, and the silence between them shattered. In that single second, the invisible spark from 10 years ago flared into a roaring flame. Renan's inner wolf instantly recognized him, whimpering in absolute relief. Thaler leaned down, his webbed fingers gently brushing a wet strand of silver hair away from Renan's face. His touch was cool against Renan's burning skin, sending a shockwave of electricity through both of them. Thaler's eyes darkened with an intense, possessive hunger as he felt the undeniable pull of the fated bond. He tilted Renan's chin up, his gaze locking onto the wolf's lips. For a long, breathless moment, the danger outside faded away. Thaler leaned in close, his cool breath fanning across Renan's cheek, whispered promise humming in his siren voice. He pressed a soft, lingering kiss to Renan's forehead, anchoring the terrified Omega to the present, claiming him in the quiet dark before the storm. But before they could even process the shock of their reunion, the wall of the cavern exploded. Alpha Garrick's trackers had used dark magical bloodhounds to follow Renan's scent down into the caves. An omega and a fish, Garrick sneered, stepping through the dust with 5 heavily armed alphas. A disgusting pairing. "Kill the creature, bring me my mate," Thaler hissed, standing defensively over Renan as his claws extended, and a massive wall of pressurized water rose to block the tunnel. But the dark magic hounds began to chew through the barrier. Renan tried to stand, his legs trembling, but the terrifying stress, combined with the suffocating presence of multiple aggressive alphas, triggered something volatile deep within his biology. His omega heat dormant and locked away for years was violently unleashed by the sheer panic. The sweet, intoxicating scent of a pure omega in heat instantly flooded the small cavern, thick and heavy like liquid silver. It drove Garrick's wolves into an absolute frenzy. They lunged, but right before the wolves could reach them, massive, glowing green tree roots violently erupted from the cavern floor, forming an impenetrable, solid wooden shield between the alphas and Renan. From the ceiling of the cavern, a figure dropped gracefully down. It was Evander. He was wearing a dark cloak, his emerald eyes burning with raw, forbidden earth magic. "Touch them, and I'll bury this entire mountain alive," Evander whispered. As Evander stood beside them, the tri-bridge bond completely snapped into place, humming with a heavy magnetic resonance. The realization hit them all like a physical blow. They weren't just random survivors from the past. They were destined to be a triad. Evander turned his head slightly, his fierce gaze softening the moment it fell on Renan's flushed, trembling form. The wingless fairy stepped closer, his hand reaching out to cup Renan's burning cheek, while Thaler wrapped a protective arm around Renan's waist from the other side. Locked between the two of them, Renan let out a soft, needy whimper, his omega nature instantly surrendering to the dual comfort of his fated mates. Evander leaned down, pressing his lips firmly against Renan's hot neck, drinking in his sweet scent, while Thaler kissed the slope of Renan's shoulder, their combined touch sending ripples of profound, addictive pleasure through the wolf's veins. "The shield won't hold," Evander shouted, blood trickling from his nose as he strained against the alpha's brute force outside. "Renan's heat scent is too strong. They will track us to the ends of the city." Thaler looked at Evander, then down at Renan, whose silver eyes were wide, completely lost to the feverish depth of his fated heat. There was only one option left to save Renan's life and hide his scent from the Alpha Pack forever. They had to perform the forbidden copulation process, the aura lock. Because they were three completely different species, the intimacy required a highly complex, deeply spiritual tri-bridge that demanded absolute physical and emotional surrender. Thaler pulled Renan tightly against his chest, shedding the distance between them. He leaned down and captured Renan's lips in a deep, passionate kiss, his sharp siren teeth gently grazing the Omega's lower lip. Through that kiss, Thaler anchored the emotional depth, using his water-borne telepathy to merge their minds, allowing all three of them to feel the exact, overwhelming pleasure pulsing through each other's bodies. Evander pressed himself against Renan's back, his strong hands sliding down to grip Renan's hips, anchoring him firmly. Evander closed his eyes and began to inject a high-frequency current of raw, ancient fairy energy directly into the connection, stabilizing the clashing elements of land and sea. Renan arched his back, gasping into Thaler's mouth as his body acted as the ultimate physical vessel, absorbing both massive elemental forces at once. The intimacy was breathtakingly intense, a beautiful dance of fire, water, and earth inside a single room. Every touch from Thaler's cool skin balanced the burning heat of Evander's magical current, wrapping Renan in a cocoon of absolute ecstasy. They moved as one, their breathing syncing perfectly to the rhythm of the universe. As their energies reached a fever pitch, Renan let out a loud, euphoric cry, biting down on Thaler's shoulder, while Evander held him tightly, burying his face in Renan's silver hair. A blinding shockwave of pure silver, blue, and green light exploded from the Triad, shattering the cave walls and pushing the Alphas back in a wave of raw, divine energy. The union was absolute. It wasn't just physical. It was a permanent, unbreakable locking of their souls. When Renan opened his eyes, his fever was gone. His Omega heat scent had been completely masked and replaced by a powerful, unassailable combined aura of water, earth, and wolf. They lay together on the stone floor for a quiet moment, wrapped in each other's arms, tracing the beautiful, permanent magical marks that had just appeared on each of their collarbones, a crescent moon, intertwined with a sea wave and an ivy leaf. They had survived the night, bound together forever in love. However, they had just created a much bigger problem. The aura lock was permanent. If they stayed in the slums, the city guards would eventually spot their matching Triad marks and arrest them for illegal crossbreeding. The only place in all of Merrowvale where a multi-species couple was legally protected from immediate execution was inside the arena of the Tri-Union Games. The next morning, the three lovers walked tightly together into the Grand City Registry. They stood before the High Judge, their matching marks glowing faintly under their collars. Evander kept his hand firmly laced with Renan's, while Thaler stood close enough that their shoulders brushed, a silent shield of devotion. "We are registering as a Triad couple for the tournament," Evander stated, his voice steady. The judge looked at them with a slow, terrifying smirk. A triad of their specific species hadn't been seen in 100 years. To the traditionalist elite, they were a threat to the natural order. To the audience, they would be an entertainment piece to be broken. The judge slowly stamped their registration paper with blood-red ink. Registered. The judge whispered, his smile widening into a sinister grin. May you survive the first round. The Triad walked out into the sunlight, believing they had secured a temporary safe haven inside the tournament rules. But they had no idea that the judge had already sold their coordinates. Alpha Garrick and the city's elite traditionalist champions had rigged the very first trial of the arena to ensure they would never make it out alive. Can Renan, Thaler, and Evander survive an arena where everyone is bought and paid to kill them? And what is the dark secret beginning to alter Renan's body from inside the bond? Find out in Part 2. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter, and leave a comment below with your predictions on how they will survive the first trial. See you in the next video.